Hello, it is me again. So we're doing another vlog tutorial type thing, and the concept for this lolita dress is to make a fully shirred bodice type dress. So this is my way of trying to make a dress that you could sort of follow that is very sort of size inclusive and very easily adjustable. And this just comes from speaking to plus size lolitas. A lot of them, what they do is they will look for dresses that are like fully shirred all across the bodice because they tend to stretch quite far. So even though they're not stated as plus size, they just end up being plus size friendly on accident. So that's the kind of concept we're going for. But also I thought it was a good idea because if you have maybe different proportions and like the bust or waist and things like that, because it's going to be shirred, it's going to be elastic, it's going to fit to any sort of proportion regardless of what your size is. And because this is a custom dress according to your size, it really doesn't matter what your size is. We're going to make it according to your body. But before we get to all the fun maths of everything that I like to do anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to dye some fabrics. As you can see, we've got some very lolita looking lace. So we've got some that have some sort of ribbon already, and we've got some that doesn't have the sort of ribbon through. As you can see, they've sort of just percentage me all together. Now I'm making a sort of gothic style, so I'm just going to end up dyeing this black. I think it's cotton. We'll soon find out because the dye I have is for natural fibers. As if you don't know, polyester fibers are more difficult to actually dye. So let's just start off with that. Hello, so I've just finished cutting out all the pattern pieces and everything, so I'm just going to give you a little quick rundown of how we get to step one, which is creating the pattern. So I've made this quite simple, so you don't have to worry about getting out a pattern cutter or going through pattern cutting school or something. It's essentially going to comprise of rectangles. So I've written down some notes here. There's only 3 measurements that you'll need, and that's going to be the width of the widest part of your body. So for some people that might be your shoulders, for some people it might be your bust, for some people it might be your hips. And essentially what you want to do is get the tape measure and put it all the way around the widest part of your body, and then we want to add a bit more length to it. So I think I added about an extra 20 centimeters about, and that is because this dress isn't going to contain any sort of the fastenings or anything like that, or any closures. So essentially, as this dress won't contain any fastenings or any closures or anything like that, it's essentially going to be a sort of pullover. So imagine it being a sort of jumper. Well, I suppose I'm making a jumper skirt, aren't I? So, but anyway, so it needs to be at least the width of your body so it can fit around the widest part, but also a bit bigger so you have a bit of leeway. So, for example, if your shoulders are the widest part and it only fit around your shoulders, you're going to be stuck, aren't you? It's going to be a little bit difficult to get it on. So, I'm rambling a bit now. The width of the widest part of your body, measure all the way around and just add a bit more for ease. I've added about 20 centimeters. Then we're going to measure the bodice length, and that is just going to be the length of the bodice from where you want the neckline to start to where your waist ends. And the strap length is going to be what you suspect, the length of a strap. You could use a bra strap if you are a bra wearer, I suppose, or anything like that. Or you could do what I've done, and it's just measure over around your shoulder where a top would normally start and end. Quite simple. And as you can see, it's going to comprise of essentially 2 rectangles. So the strap, pretty easy. We're going to have the length, going to be the length of the strap, and I've added 6 centimeters in width because I want mine that wide. You can have yours narrower or wider. One thing I would recommend is people with fuller busts tend to like wider straps as it distributes weight well, if that makes sense. You know, the force equals pressure over area. If the area is bigger, there's less force and pressure. That's mechanics, right? Yes. I mean, I did study mechanics years ago, but that's not the point. And for the bodice part, it's going to be the length of the bodice and half of the width of all the way around that we measured, and that is because it's going to be cut on the fold. So that is when the fabric is folded in half. So when we cut out the piece, we can unfold the fabric and it will look a bit like those symmetrical artwork pieces you make, a bit like butterfly pictures or snowflakes and things like that. So 2 rectangles. Oh, also remember seam allowance. So I think I've done about 1.5 to 2 centimeters depending on the pieces, but typically when I do a project I just do 1.5 on everything unless it's something really small. Some places do 1 centimeter. It doesn't really matter. It depends really on what you want to do and how much fabric you have. But if you don't know what to do, I would just recommend 1.5. What you would do is just add that around anywhere that you cut out. So it would be all the way around of the straps and only around the 3 of here, as this is on the fold. So this won't be a piece that actually gets cut, so it won't be affected by seam allowance when we have to sew the edges down. So I can actually show you, because I actually have done this already. You can see I've finished the edges, so there's not a raw edge anymore, and obviously as the fabric has been folded over, I've used some of the fabric. And if I don't take this into account, like taking away, of course it's only about 1 centimeter or so here, but it will eventually add up, and then all of a sudden the dress is too small and you can't get it on. So do take that into consideration. So as you can see, we've got our lovely dyed lace, and what we're going to do is we're going to go on. Oh dear. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to show you how the straps are done. So we're going to get 2 of our 4 straps, and we're going to get any decorative lace that we want. I've got another one as well, but just for this purpose I'll just show you. You want to, whatever lace what we have, I'm just going to sandwich it in between these 2 strap pieces, and we're going to do it right sides together. So as you can see, this is the wrong side that I'm showing you. So these are all sides you won't see, and then what we would do is pin this all the way down and then sew down here, and when we open it up, we will see that it will be stuck within the fabric. So let's start off with that. So we've made the strap, and now I'm just going to add some elastic to it. And this is more so just so it stays on my shoulders a bit better. You don't really need to do this, I just think it might help improve fit a bit. So then the usual thing, I've cut out a piece of elastic and it's a bit shorter than the strap length, so it'll stretch and the tension will keep it on my shoulder. And I've attached a little safety pin, that's what they're called. I've attached a safety pin to the elastic, and we're just going to thread it through so we can essentially sew it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it stretched out, have one end sewn there and one end sewn on that end, and then it will scrunch up a bit like sort of like a scrunchie sort of. So let's just thread this through. There we go. We've got a bit more sort of adjustable, more comfortable fitting strap. Before we move on to the main part of the bodice, I'm just going to show you how I'm putting in the straps. So we've got the right sides of the bodice fabric together, and we've just pinned across the top edge, and in between the top edge is going to sandwich the straps. So when we turn the fabric over again, you can see the strap there, and we can see it will create, maybe hopefully you can see somehow, somewhat, maybe this is what I get for working with all black really, but you should see when I sew it across it will create a more neat sort of seam line when you can't see a visible seam. It just looks pretty nice. So that's how we're going to do with that. So what we're going to do is take the center back strap, if it makes any sense, of the strap that will be behind you. We're going to go in from the center back of the fabric, and we're going to go in about 8 centimeters, and that's where we start sewing or pinning for now, that panel. And then the other side of the strap, which would be around the sort of side front, actually side back, side front, that's not accurate. What I've done is I've just halved the fabric lengthways and halved it again. So this is about a quarter or so into the fabric, so you get roughly a side front and a side back. Now, I'm not quite sure how this is going to look once everything's all gathered together. Hopefully it will look okay. But for now, this is the measurements that I'm going to go with. So what we're going to do, and I think I've said so many times now, we're going to sew across the top edge of the bodice, and we're going to sandwich the ends of the straps in, so that way when we turn it over, nice and neat. You do. You're gonna try and sit in there again, aren't you? Hello, so I'm back. I suppose pro tip, if you have, I think it's generation 2 My Little Pony, they have magnetic feet. They're very good for cleaning up pins if you have any stray pins hanging about. So get your My Little Ponies out and make them very cute aesthetic pin holders, I suppose. But anyway, I have actually gone in and sewn the straps already. So it's essentially, although some hidden scissors there, quite dangerous actually, there is a sort of long bodice now. It looks a bit like a long boy. And what we're going to do now is we're going to sew in some panels to put the elastic through. Now, I have actually measured this beforehand. So for me, on this particular bodice, I'm going to sew 2 centimeters even. That's what I get for alternating between the two. Let me put this, straighten this out a bit better. Okay, it's still a bit wonky, but as we can see, this is where I've sewn at the top. So what I've done when I've measured it beforehand, and I was cutting it out, I sew in 2 centimeters inwards, then a 3 centimeter channel, then 2 centimeter gap, then 3 centimeter channel, another 2 centimeter gap, and another 3 centimeter channel. So that's what I'm going to do for mine. It might be slightly different for you depending on your proportion. You might have a longer torso or a shorter one, etc., etc. So what I would do is I would actually measure this while I'm cutting out the pattern before we get to this stage, and you can actually use the markings on the sewing machine to help you work out the channel, so you don't need to mark it on. Now, every machine is different, but at least if you have a modern sewing machine, it'd be very rare if it didn't have the little indication markings. But if it doesn't, you can always use a ruler or something to mark them on with some tailor's chalk if you need to do all of that. So what I'm going to do, get my sewing machine, do the 2 centimeter and the 3 centimeter thing all the way down until we're finished, and then we're going to have a look at the fun lace decoration part. So let's get back to that sewing machine. Hello, it is the evening time and we've got a long boy, a pretty long boy for our bodice. And before we move on to gathering it all up, I just going to note I've pinned some lace to the front as a sort of edging lace, a sort of trim. I can't think of the right word right now, but I did that to sort of add some sort of decoration. So this is something I was contemplating. I was thinking about adding lace all the way down over the channels, but the lace I have is quite substantial. It's quite chunky. I don't know if you remember, it's when I was dyeing, it's lace that has, it's a lot wider. It has 2 sort of edges here, and when I tried to line it up and sort of work it out, it worked out that the lace was far too wide for it to not overcrowd the bodice, make it look a bit too strange. So instead of doing all of that, I've decided to just add the thinner lace to the top, and I've got a little bit left. I may not have enough to reciprocate this exact lace in the skirt or not, but we will make it work and we'll just sort of work something out. But anyway, lace at the top. I'm going to hand stitch this. Probably going to do a running back stitch or a back stitch or something like that, but I'm just gonna go and hand stitch that, easiest for me, and then we'll move on to the elastic channel things. So as you might be able to see, this is a fairly intricate lace pattern, and I'm just going in with some white thread to match the sort of white embroidery. As you can see, I'm trying to sew within the embroidery pattern, so it almost looks like there's something invisible. Now, I'm not sure how secure this is going to be. I think it's going to be quite secure, but if this ends up coming loose or anything, I will take advantage of the machine seam here, if you can see, and I would actually go over this again with another machine seam to help secure it a bit. Now, the reason I haven't gone in and done that is because if I just sew this bottom edge, we'll have this top edge flapping about, and I will have to find a way to secure that. But anyway, my first call of action, I've forgotten that turn of phrase, but I'm essentially trying to go through the pattern to sort of go in. So in these sort of floral sort of areas, I'm going through this hole here that's been left by the sort of pattern. If I can find it, just take a bit of time. There we go. You can see it's going through, and then obviously just a bit tough because there's a few layers there. I'm going to pull that round. You can see there. Now when I'm going back into the fabric, I want to go in here where this little sort of stitch goes, or here if I wanted the stitch to be a bit longer, but I tend to go in through here. So if I just do that, go back in, it will disguise itself with the existing pattern you already have. So if I just go back in, and it's pretty much invisible. It's very difficult to decipher what is the original embroidery and what is the thread I've used. So again, in this sort of section, I sort of go through this bit of embroidery here, and I'll try to get it avoiding the ribbon. So I might maneuver the ribbon a bit. I'll try sort of get it through the embroidery bit, or just it sort of ends, so there's a kind of gap there, and sort of bring it through again, and go back in. We're still trying to emulate a back stitch sort of motion to add more support to the stitch. I'm gonna go in on the edge of the fabric, the sort of embroidery there. Again, oh dear, there's a bit, quite a few layers now, so it's getting quite tough. So, oh dear. I should be using a thimble. I will be honest, I should be. I really do. Until an injury happens, which you shouldn't do, you should be using a thimble. But anyway, I'm going to put that in. And as you can see again, it has disguised itself pretty well with the actual stitch. So I'm going to just keep doing that, keep sewing within the embroidery as much as I can to make it seem pretty much invisible. So we've almost done the top half. What we're going to do now is just add the elastic panels, and then when we get to doing the skirt, we'll actually sew down that centre back and do all of that. So lastly, we're going to do the little elastics. So obviously cut out a length of elastic you need. I would say make sure it's smaller than the final measurement, as an elastic tends to stretch, and the amount will depend on the tension of the one that you use and all that kind of thing. And put something on the end that's sort of bulky that you can sort of feel through the fabric. So my go-to is a safety pin. What I'm going to do is find one of the channels and then open it up, and then I'm just going to put the elastic through. Okay, so we're getting close to this end disappearing. Just going to get a little pin, and we're just going to pin it in place on this end, so of course we don't lose it when we get to the other end. So just pin it there and then carry on with feeding it through. And there we go, we've got it on the other end. And we're going to do the same as we have just done before. And I'm going to get the pin and we're just going to pin it in place. So now it's very scrunched up, sort of like a giant scrunchie, sort of. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it for the other channels, and then we're going to just sew across on the end where we've pinned it down to secure it in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it for the other channels, and then we'll move along to the sewing machine. So I've sewn the edges. I actually did it by hand, but you can do it by machine or by hand, and it is a fun sort of maybe almost accordion type thing, which has lots of stretch to it. And that's it really for part one of the bodice. We've got a bodice now. If anything, if you wanted to just use it as a top, you could always just sew up the back and as a top, but we are going to go further and make a dress. So that's it for now. Stay tuned, I suppose, for the next part. And with that, go have fun with fashion. Okay, bye!